Back by popular demand, we did this session 3 years in a row. We're going to do it again. Information has changed. I hope that's helpful for you. I'm Paul Lewis. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Pythian. And we have Matt Ferrari, my very good friend. And we're going to talk about the Wayfair journey of AI. And we're going to step back a bit before we step forward. But let's talk about Matt first. Background, advantage, Wayfair itself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So Matt Ferrari, I lead platforms across Wayfair. Most of you probably know Wayfair, but if you don't, Wayfair, home goods, e-commerce company, now physical retail company. And so we're going to talk today about, to Paul's point, an update on our agentic and AI progress. But picture Wayfair, 23-year-old business that has had to transform multiple times over and is now developing a lot of agentic and omni-channel experiences to allow you to shop wherever you are in the world.
So we're going to talk future of online furniture shopping. Awesome. Let's talk about grassroots. Let's go back to the Wayback Machine, a couple of years old, and say we had to address the application. Tell us about that. What had to be addressed with the application?
Yeah, sure. So Wayfair, again, couple decade-old company. It sometimes doesn't feel that way, but picture 6,000 applications, many of them homegrown, and needed to transform into public cloud. So to Paul's question, think about a monolithic architecture, things like SQL databases, legacy PHP code that we needed to translate, update, and make an overall better customer and supplier experience. Back to borrowing words, grassroots. Wayfair is not somebody who manufactures goods, right? Picture over 30 million SKUs, 20,000 suppliers with very dynamic things like GeoSort, the ability to get a big package to you really, really quickly, as well as allowing a supplier to determine things like inventory levels, pricing, geographical distribution, things like that. So not a simple thing, a lot of supply chain work, not just what you see and buy.
And that wasn't the future of your application. You had desires to be something else.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So Wayfair had to go through a journey of how do we make the experience easier for customers to get something into their home that might weigh 1,000 pounds, from weeks to days to hours on the customer experience side. But on the application side, which I know we're going to focus on here, picture a couple decades of millions of line of code, of tens and tens of thousands of stored procedures that we had to make agentic, that we had to refactor, that we had to make cloud native. And so that's been the journey. And so that hopefully that's the baseline.
So that weekend turned over, you did all that work in a while, but you saved. Instead of being years and years of effort, how much effort did you save?
Yeah. So you can see it on the slides here, and I'm not a slide reader, right? But you can see we saved a couple decades of software development. The key here is when you think about 6,000 applications and you think about the customer experience, we want our 2,300 or so developers to focus on what matters to a customer. And that's not infrastructure. That's not moving from SQL to Postgres to Spanner to Alloy. Sure, all those things are cool, and I do those things, but we want our actual developers to focus on what impacts our customers and our suppliers. And so we partnered with Pythian, we partnered with Google, to the point of this slide, to transform a lot of our data applications, to transform a lot of our applications themselves to be agentic, which we're going to walk through here, so that we could focus on customer features.
And since it was a couple of years ago, we didn't have the tools and technologies we have today. This was old school AI, old school code conversion. We had to look at the SQL, we had to look at the schema, we had to look at the application, we had to incorporate what the target architecture is, the target database. We wanted to be globally distributed, monolithic application, relatively large single database into a very distinct architecture, all AI code creation in order to support this massive change. But application wasn't the only foundational change. Data also the foundational change. What's the data problem that had to be overcome?
Great. So data problem. Think about, again, 30 million SKUs plus with all different kind of dimensions, right? Think about the size of your curtains or the size of your rug or all of the different variations of bed sheets. So it gets really complex. You're talking about millions of different SKUs inside of tables. And so as Wayfair thought about that, we focused on how can we get data insights out of the data. And so we leveraged a lot of native Google tooling and technology. Think of the big queries, the big tables, things like that, to extract data, Looker to display data. We partner with Pythian to transform literally thousands of SQL servers that in some cases, a single SQL server, to Paul's point about a single purpose database, was talking to over 80 applications. So think about all those dependencies. And so we had to work on application mapping, dependency mapping. Then we had to actually start extracting the data. But back to Paul's question, the purpose here was how can we make it easier not to just put in red rug or blue couch, but instead use some kind of agentic workflow to talk to our data that says, hey, I want a gray rug that fits this room. And I want to be able to upload an image of my room and Imagineer what's it's going to look like in the space. And so that's what we had to start doing from a data perspective. But it was a lot of, I guess the buzzword would be data curation.
And the secondary problem was data quality, right? Where the dimensions didn't match the actual product. So product gets delivered, doesn't meet the dimensions, customer satisfaction problem.
Yeah. And I skipped it on the last slide, but in full transparency, if any of you are in retail or e-commerce, you would see that as higher return rate, right? In Wayfair's case, lots of big items. Maybe you bought a bed or a couch. That's really expensive for you. It's going to take up a ton of time. Matter of fact, it's super expensive for Wayfair. Maybe the supplier is overseas. We might even say, hey, keep the extra couch. We messed up. Now you got 2 couches. But what a painful, awful process. And so we had to really focus on how do we get the dimensions right across millions and millions of SKUs.
So say, how do we fix this problem? AI, yet again. Anybody here heard of chain of thought reasoning? Is that a thing you've heard of, right? So here's the academic part of the lesson here. Chain of thought reasoning is a means to look at prompting, not AI agentic workflows, but prompting, and force it to reason through a complex problem. Think of a mathematics problem. I have 18 steps I have to go through to find an individual and absolute solution. That's what chain of thought prompting is, versus an agentic workflow where I have multiple LLMs talking to each other. We need to do that in a very specific pattern so that we updated the product description appropriately. You can think of the pattern exactly as you see it. We needed to consume a whole bunch of things. Product catalog images, product catalog descriptions, inventory content. I had to bring all that together, vision dimensions out of the pictures themselves. This is the front, back, side, top, bottom of this particular product. Pull out those dimensions, compare those dimensions to the actual reconciled product, the source of truth, determine which one of those things were true. Maybe some of those pictures were true and some of those weren't. And then update the asset, either the picture or the description, and then kick off the process to the next product. 30,000 times? A lot. But imagine going through the entire process now having a higher quality product list now changes the satisfaction 100%. As you can see, a big 90% increase. And I'm sure there's a next slide coming. Okay, so what else do we do? What are the sort of smaller things?
Yeah, sure. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to show some examples, but we partnered with Pythian to kind of reimagine the way a customer shops, right? I'm sure everyone is probably using some kind of agentic thing to shop right now. You're probably not using just Google or Amazon and putting in the thing you want. You're probably having conversation, right? And so Wayfair has been changing the way we do things like conversational search. We're also changing the way that we do visual search and visual design. And so we really focused on partnering with Pythian and some of our agentic folks, including Gemini, to build out tooling and technology to visualize the space. Some of that is, again, to be able to upload an image of your room or dimensions of your room and be able to move around, put furniture in the space. Some of it is maybe you're like me and you want to be able to you don't have, let's say, a design gene, which I certainly don't, and you want to be able to pick specific types of furniture for specific, for specific rooms that you have. And so Wayfair partnered with how do we take the data, extract it, to Paul's point in the last slide, normalize the data, and be able to provide some kind of pattern matching. And so as we think about kind of the future, we really wanted to focus on how do we meet the customer where they are. And so back to the beginning, that means a couple things. The first is omni-channel. While a buzzword, in Wayfair's world, what that means is that whether you're online or you're in the mobile app or now you're in a store, we actually provide you kind of that single omni-channel experience that allows you to keep things in your cart persistently, that allows you to scan an item with a QR code and have some persistent search across the architecture and the infrastructure, and now allows you to do more agentic or chatbot-based searching. And I think we're going to have a slide here in a second, but Wayfair launched quite a few different chatbot features. I'm sure everyone is walking around talking about your agentic chatbot stuff, but we really wanted to focus on how do we explain to a customer the art of the possible, right? Rather than search for that red couch, how do we find what's going to match that red couch? How do we give them examples of what other customers have done and seen? And what you see from a Wayfair perspective is a real deep focus on kind of that more interactive experience. And so we're using agentic for the vast majority of that.
Maintaining context is difficult, as we all know. Maintaining context in a single channel, difficult when it's online interactive. Maintaining context across channels, I want to start my product shopping, I want to continue in a second channel, and I want to buy in the third channel, and maintaining context through that entire setup, that's the most complicated. But we've got through. Okay, future of shopping, you've got a couple amazing things you're working on.
Yeah, sure. So Muse, don't know if anyone's ever used it, provides kind of that non-creepy way of being able to see what's actually could be in your room, and provides you ongoing engagement and pattern matching of, hey, maybe you bought the lamp, what is the next thing that you should do to create the space or complete the space? Things that people don't know about Wayfair. Wayfair has multiple brands. So picture if you've ever heard of things like Joss and Main or Paragold or Birch Lane, things like that. And so we have multiple brands. And so we wanted to build a generative AI that speaks to all of our brands depending on what your kind of design patterns are. The second thing that it does is it really focuses on our B2B market. And so while maybe you're a consumer, we also have a large B2B space. So picture you're in the rental space, or you do construction, or you build model homes, things like that, or you're Google, which is a customer as well. And so we wanted to build out some kind of interactive AI space because if you listen to Gartner, about 50% of our target market still likes to touch and feel their furniture. So how can we get them as close to that experience as possible?
As close to going to a store as possible.
Yeah.
Discover tab.
Okay, cool. Discover tab. So this is all AI-driven product recommendations. It is leveraging technologies, including Gemini. It's using models like Opus as an example, if you're out there. But picture being able to use the Discover tab if you actually don't know what you want, right? We have a program called Wayfair Verified, which actually brings in all of our furniture, touches it, has people touch it, feel it, test it, say what's wrong with it, record videos of it, and now leverages AI to imagine you in the space if it is actually in your home. And so it's driven based off of product recommendations. What have you searched for historically? What have you purchased historically? What is the next thing that you probably need for your space? And so all of that is very AI driven.
Here's to finish the room.
Yep.
Shopping assistant.
Okay, cool. Another example of how do we actually provide some kind of styling advice? About 30 to 40% of our customers actually don't know what they want. So they enter into a chat box, something like red rug for my small living room. Well, traditional search probably sucks at that, right? And so we wanted to build some kind of intelligence to provide style. Of course, we have folks who focus full time on providing style to our customers. Now we actually provide them near real-time advice along their journey. And then on the business side, we provide them more intelligent targeted advertising, right? So leveraging AI. So you've probably gotten ads from Wayfair or others that make absolutely no sense over the years, right? You got a ping pong table for your bedroom, right? My bad, by the way, I ran that team. We're leveraging AI to provide you more context specific advertising so that you're getting the right ad at the right time.
So working backwards, match my style to things that are in Wayfair, help me build out a room, furniture that would match that style, And if I'm missing something, recommend the thing that I'm missing.
And all chatbot based, right? So rather than, we fundamentally believe that we're moving away from traditional search in our space. And so making it more interactive and chatbot based.
Awesome. So lots of AI innovation, both before and after, older technologies, newer technologies. So one question to ask is there a piece of advice? You've gone through a journey, multi-year journey, seen lots of change, including this week you've seen lots of change. Is there advice to the audience? Is there something that they should think about before, during, and after making a decision?
Are you answering this too?
Yes, I can absolutely answer that.
All right. Okay, so my advice is different than last year. First off, on the business side, my advice would be curious. We have over 2,000 software engineers. Some of them are, let's say, power users of AI. Some of them are hesitant and scared, right? I would say be curious. And so this time last year, we were probably leveraging one or two models. Gartner analysts, what I would say is a lot of these models are now flip-flopping in both complexity as well as capability and availability. And so Wayfair, while we're a heavy Google and Gemini shop, we're open to other models and we leverage multiple AI technologies and AI tools. And I'm happy to talk about them. But I would say the first thing is be curious. The second thing in terms of scaling is really focusing on kind of that, we're not talking about it today in this session, but the end-to-end SDLC or the end-to-end developer experience, right? How do I do things like, we talked about data a lot, but how do I do things like make sure that I have AI doing all of my automated testing, all of my observability monitoring, all of my AI SRE ops or self-healing. And so not only does that drive a different AI culture as I think about the business, but it's pushed a lot of our, let's say, traditional developers out of their comfort zone in a good way, where they now find, oh, I can use that for this specific use case. And so that's where I would say.
My advice is 2025 was a lot of AI experimentation. I did put things to production, but I did more experiments than I did production. 2026 is putting it into production. That requires one very important choice. Which use case will produce the most value? And it may not be the nickels and dimes, the 5s and 10 minutes. It's the $1 million idea. So determining that list of ideas and then picking the right one, that's the hard part. Well, thanks, Matt. That was awesome. We did everything in the full 20 minutes. You can reach me at Paul Lewis, CTO, and Pythian.com. How can they reach you?
M Ferrari at Wayfair.com, or just find me right now.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.